Carly revealed it casually, almost playfully, but the impact was seismic. For more than 40 years, the world had obsessed over a single question, dissecting every lyric, every pause, every breath in that song, and now here she was, calmly dismantling half a century of speculation. But what she didn't say on camera was even more important. Behind the scenes, she admitted that the first and second verses were about two different men. And the third, the part she first confirmed, was Warren Beatty. But the first verse and the second, those had their own ghosts. The first verse, she later hinted, was about a man whose hunger for fame eclipsed everything, even the people who loved him. A man who walked into rooms like he owned them. Fans speculated for years, could it be Mick Jagger, a Hollywood producer, a musician who charmed her in the early 70s? She refused to name him, not because she wanted to protect him, but because naming him would give him exactly what he always wanted: attention. The second verse, the one that stung the deepest, was about a man who had broken her heart so quietly that the world never even knew they were together. Someone who slipped into her life, promised her tenderness, and left her hollow. A man with power, influence, and a reputation for emotional detachment. Someone who had once pulled her close and whispered that she was different. She later admitted that verse was the hardest to write. The heartbreak in those lines was real. By the time 2015 rolled around, Carly was ready to talk. But she wasn't ready to expose everything. She said, "Two men know who they are, and that's enough." And that was the truth. Carly Simon had kept the world guessing for 50 years, because mystery was part of the song's DNA. The unknown gave it life. To name everyone would kill the magic. Instead, she offered pieces, clues. Fragment sand, let the world do the rest. But here's what most people don't know. You're So Vain wasn't written out of anger. It was written out of survival. Those men didn't just break her heart. They reminded her of every betrayal she had survived since childhood. The silence in her home, the affair, the assaults she endured at 7, the times she wasn't believed, the pain no one protected her from. When she wrote, "You probably think this song is about you," she wasn't mocking them. She was reclaiming herself, taking back power. Turning trauma into art after her memoir, Carly retreated again. She spent more time on Martha's Vineyard, walking on the beach she'd loved since she was a child. She painted. She gardened. She wrote in journals she never intended to publish. She visited local bookstores quietly, slipping in unnoticed, same way her father once moved through the world of publishing, softly, deliberately. Fame had taken so much from her. Now she was taking herself back. Her relationship with her children deepened, too. Ben Taylor became a musician, following in both parents' footsteps. Sally became a singer-songwriter and educator. They performed together, sometimes soft harmonies, acoustic guitars, and the kind of unspoken connection that comes from surviving life's storms as a unit. Carly said her children were her greatest music, her greatest truth. In 2019, she returned to the public eye briefly. This time for something different, her political activism. She had always inherited her mother's passion for justice, but now she spoke more boldly. There was no stage fright when she talked about the world. She didn't shake. She didn't panic. She stood firm. She spoke like someone who had survived too much to be afraid anymore. Even in her 70s, she continued creating. She recorded lullabies for children. She wrote personal essays. She collaborated on music projects. She appeared on tribute albums. And every time someone asked her about You're So Vain, she smiled like she knew a secret they'd never fully uncover. Because she did. She never remarried after. James Hart. She said she was done chasing the kind of love that demanded self-erasure. Instead, she nurtured friendships, surrounded herself with artists and writers, and let the quiet life she always wanted finally become real. Hidden Star Hill, her vineyard home, became a sanctuary, a place where ghosts could settle, past wounds could breathe, and old melodies could echo without judgment. In 2022, Carly Simon was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was long overdue. She didn't attend because she had just lost her two sisters, Lucy and Joanna, within one heartbreaking week. She said she couldn't stand on a stage and smile while her heart was breaking open. But her presence was felt anyway. Sarah Bareilles performed Nobody Does It Better in her honor. Olivia Rodrigo sang You're So Vain with the Same Fire Carly Once Carried. And in the audience people cried. Because Carly wasn't just a singer. She was a storyteller. A survivor. A woman whose voice had held generations together. Today her legacy stretches across 6 decades. Millions of records sold. Grammys, Oscars, Golden Globes. A memoir that shook Hollywood. Songs that still sting with truth. But her real legacy is something quieter. It's the courage to turn pain into art, to tell the truth even when it trembles, to reclaim her voice again and again, the girl who once stuttered, the woman who feared stages, the artist who nearly quit, the survivor who chose to speak anyway. That is Carly Simon. And for all the guesses, all the rumors, all the headlines about You're So Vain, here is the irony. The song wasn't really about those men at all. It was. It's about her strength, her clarity, her power, her right to finally say, I see you, and I see myself too. In the end, the greatest twist in music history wasn't who the song was about, it was who Carly Simon became because of it. But before anyone could ask her what she truly meant, she lifted her head, gathered her breath, and said something that froze the entire room. The truth was never about fame, it was about survival. For the first time in decades, her voice cracked. Not from age, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of secrets she had carried for half a century. The room grew still. Cameras stopped subtly panning. Even the director motioned the crew to hold their breath, because Carly Simon wasn't talking about jealousy or heartbreak or celebrity gossip anymore. She was talking about something deeper, something darker, something she had never dared. Put into lyrics, the men behind the MYSDRY for years, the world treated You're So Vain like a riddle, a party game, a late-night talk show trick. Even the men she dated, some of Hollywood's biggest icons, leaned into the myth. Some bragged, some guessed, some secretly hoped, but Carly knew the truth was bigger than ego. It was about dignity. Each of the 3 men she wrote about had carried a different kind of power over her. A power she spent years trying to reclaim. The first man. The one with the yacht. The one who walked into a party like he was walking onto a yacht. Never understood that what hurt her wasn't betrayal. It was the moment he told her that her career, her voice, was nothing but a temporary hobby, he thought. He was being clever when he said it. He didn't see her freeze. He didn't see her future forming in silence. He didn't know those words would become part of music history, the second man, the second. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't cruel, but he was careless. A rising Hollywood star whose charm was a currency too, powerful for his own good. He loved the idea of Carly, her mystery, her softness, her fire, but not the real woman. Not the woman who wrote songs at 3 a.m., not the woman who stayed awake worrying about everyone but herself. Not the woman who needed loyalty more than applause. He broke her heart not with words but with indifference. He drifted away like a tide receding from the shore, leaving behind wet sand and echoing footsteps. And in that quiet damage, Carly found another verse. The third, may and but the third. He was different. He was dangerous. Not violent, not physically threatening. He was dangerous in ways that don't leave bruises. He was the kind of man who could make you feel lucky to be invisible. The kind who could convince you your intuition was wrong. The kind who lived in mirrors and expected everyone around him to keep polishing them. He needed admiration like oxygen. And when Carly finally walked away, he told her she'd regret losing the most important man of her career. Said it like a prophecy, but it became a lyric. The song that saved HER Carly wasn't trying to expose anyone. She wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. She was trying to breathe. She was. 27. She was overwhelmed. She was aching. In ways she didn't yet have words for, so she did. The only thing she knew how to do, she wrote. She wrote, sitting on the edge of a hotel bathtub, with makeup still smudged beneath her eyes. She wrote with her shoes still on. She wrote with her heart racing so fast she could barely stay still. And as she wrote, something inside her clicked. Her voice strong, sharp, unforgettable, took shape. This time, she wasn't the girl trying to protect someone else's feelings. She was the woman reclaiming her own. Fame made the mystery I am, Momarda, when You're So Vain reached #1. Hollywood erupted. Every magazine wanted the truth. Every producer wanted the gossip. Every late-night host wanted the punchline. The men she had written about, suddenly, they didn't want anonymity. They wanted ownership. One called her, another sent a gift, a third confronted her backstage at a charity event with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. She laughed about it publicly because that's what women were expected to do. But privately, she found it surreal. These men, who once made her feel small, now wanted to be the center of a song that came from her most private pain. They wanted to be the villain. They wanted the legacy. They wanted the spotlight she earned, but Carly refused to give them the satisfaction. The years of silence, CEF 450, years she stayed quiet. Not because she owed anyone protection, not because she was afraid, but because the world had misunderstood the song so deeply, so loudly, for so long, that the truth no longer felt like a conversation, it felt like a confession. A confession she wasn't ready to make. She watched the rumors grow into folklore. She watched interviews twist into myths. She watched fans write essays and documentaries, trying to identify men who were never the point, because the point was never who the song was about. The point was why she wrote it. The moment of RECKO and GND, now decades later. Sitting in a warm room with lights dimmed and cameras rolling, Carly finally exhaled. She looked tired, but peaceful, as if carrying the truth had aged her. But releasing it was making her young again, she said. The world wanted the names. I wanted the closure. The interviewer leaned forward, eyes wide, waiting for the revelation. But Carly didn't give a list. She didn't reveal identities. She didn't point fingers. She simply said, each man taught me something painful. Each man left a scar, and each scar became a verse. Paused. A tear didn't fall, but it shimmered. The song wasn't revenge. It was escape. Her final Tia Carly Simon didn't expose the men. She exposed the moment she stopped letting men define her worth. She exposed the moment she stopped shrinking her voice. She exposed the moment she realized pain could be alchemy. She smiled. Small and soft. The world thinks the song is about vanity, but really, it's about freedom. And in that moment, 50 years of mystery finally made sense. Not because she solved it, but because she reclaimed it. But what? Carly said next, changed everything. Because up until that moment, her story felt like a time capsule sealed, preserved, protected by decades of mystery. Yet now, she was ready to open it. She leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and said, people think a breakup inspired the song. They're wrong. It was 3 awakenings. The interviewer furrowed his brow, unsure if she meant heartbreak, enlightenment, or something more mystical. Carly noticed, and a faint smile played on her lips. She clarified, awakenings are louder than heartbreak. They shake you. They expose you. They rearrange you. She wasn't speaking like a singer anymore. She was speaking like a survivor of ego, of manipulation, of the invisible battles women fought silently in the shadows of powerful men. The first, awakening finding her voice, described the first man again, but this time with a softness that suggested understanding rather than anger. He wasn't a monster. He was simply a product of a world that applauded male confidence but punished female certainty. He treated her music like a hobby because nobody taught him better, Carly explained. When he dismissed me, it didn't hurt because he was cruel. It hurt because I believed him. That was her first awakening, realizing that the universe didn't assign her a voice, she had to claim it. The second awakening, losing HRSL. Second man taught her something different. His indifference wasn't intentional cruelty, but it was devastating. She remembered a moment so clearly. She could still see the sunlight hitting the floor of the studio. She had played him a new melody. She was proud of something raw, something honest. He listened for 20 seconds, nodded casually, and asked, "Do you want Thai or Italian for dinner?" That was the moment she understood that love can starve the soul when it doesn't listen. He didn't break my heart. She said he dimmed it. That dimming became a lyric. That lyric became a verse. That verse became part of the song that would define her life. The third awakening. The man of Miar, Arrest the third man was the one who changed her forever because he forced her to confront something she had been ignoring for years, her fear of disappointing people. He knew how to weaponize charm. He knew how to make silence feel like punishment. He knew how to twist admiration into obligation, Carly said. He wanted an audience, not a partner. And she had played the role too well for too long. Until the day she didn't. The day she walked away. He gave her a smile so smooth it made her stomach twist. And then he said that infamous line. It's the one that still stung after all these years. "You'll regret losing the most important man in your career." She repeated the words slowly, as if testing whether they still had power over her. They didn't. She lifted her chin. He was wrong. The most important person in my career was me. The world never saw her by Eureka when the song exploded. Everyone focused on the glamour, the gossip, the theories, the boldness of her lyrics, but behind the scenes, she was still rebuilding herself, piece by piece, verse by verse. No one saw her crying quietly in the makeup chair before interviews. No one saw her fixing her smile in the dressing room mirror because tears had blurred the eyeliner. No one saw the journal pages she filled every night with words she didn't dare speak aloud. The world celebrated the hit, but the hit came from a wound. A wound she was still learning to heal. The letters she never seen for the first time. Carly revealed something she had never shared publicly. She had written letters to each of the three men. Long, aching, furious, honest letters. She wrote them late at night when the house was silent, when the tidal wave of emotion pulled her under, but she never mailed them, not a single one. Those letters were therapy. She said, not communication. Years later, she found them in a box. Yellowed by time, she read each one again, and she forgave herself, not them herself. The mistake the world ma. The interviewer gently asked if she regretted writing the song. She laughed softly. I regret letting the world treat it like a scavenger hunt. For decades, radio hosts, journalists, fans of Anne's celebrities had missed the story entirely. The song wasn't an insult. It wasn't an expose. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary she didn't know how to set in conversations, so she said it in melody. It was me saying, "You don't get to define me anymore." That line hit like a revelation, not just for Carly, for everyone listening. The price of truth. She admitted something even deeper. The song cost her friendships. It created tensions. It scared people who weren't used to women telling their side of the story, but the silence cost her more. That's why she broke it now. Not for drama, not for attention, but because age had given her clarity, and because for the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to speak. Her final message to the WORLD Carly. looked straight into the camera not as a performer, but as a woman finally freed from decades of speculation. Her voice trembled. But not from fear, from relief. The people in the song were important chapters in my life, but they are not the whole book. She pressed a hand to her chest. This, she said, referring to herself, is the whole book. She smiled, one of those rare, genuine smiles that arrive only after truth has been set down gently into the world. I didn't write, "You're so vain to expose anyone." I wrote it to find me. And in that final moment, the mystery that had fascinated the world for 50 years didn't end, it transformed. From gossip to healing, from speculation to story, from vanity to freedom.